What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the I Will podcast. Today we'll be talking about trust. I'm here with Pedro Perez Roura. I said it wrong all the time.
Pedro Perez Roura.
Roura. There we go. He is, currently you are my trust attorney, and it's somebody who I trust. And as I've engaged into more and more conversations with you, I feel that you have so much information that none of us are aware about. And it's like, the more I talk to you, the more I'm like, oh crap, people need to know about this. So I wanted to start first by, ask you some details about the basics of it.
Sure.
And maybe tell me some kind of story or something. So let's start with, what's the basic? What is a trust?
So a trust, think of a trust almost as like an extension of a will, right? Not you, Will, but a last will and testament, right? So a trust is essentially, it's a relationship, right? Where you're trusting somebody with title to your property to manage it for other people, right? So let's just say I have some assets that I want to leave to my kids. I can name somebody a trustee, right? Let's just say I'm naming you. I'm trusting you, Will, to manage these assets for my kids, right? So it's really a relationship, right? Where you're holding legal title. So if we're talking about a piece of real estate, I would title the real estate William Ledesma as trustee of Pedro's trust, right? And you're now going to collect rent, pay, for all the expenses, whatnot, and then the profits, you can distribute it out, all based on the terms of...
Like whatever you agreed upon.
Yep.
Okay. Another question, because I think the biggest misconception is that, like, these trusts are like for the rich. Like, is it, like, when should you consider, like, at what level, if you could give a certain thing, like getting a trust?
So I don't really think about it in terms of amount of money or types of assets. It's really on the situation. I've created trusts for, people who, it's not even a lot of money, $50,000, $60,000, but because of the person that we're trying to help, right? A disabled individual who has some government benefits, right? And we're trying to protect those benefits, right? We want to leave them an inheritance. Well, we can't give it to them directly because then they lose their benefits, right? So in that situation, it's actually not an incredible amount of assets in terms of dollar value. It's really about the situation. Now, another situation where it's very common that it's not a ton of assets, but we want to have a trust is for minor children. So I have 3 kids, they're 7, 5, and 1 year old, right? If I'm going to leave them anything, right? Let's just say I were to pass away now while they're still minors, leaving it to them in their name is a horrible decision. They can't make contracts, do anything like that. So leaving it to them in trust is really the way to do it.
So, but most people see, I guess I'm Hispanic, and nobody, like growing up, nobody knew trust. Like, and even barely anybody heard about will. But why would you choose a trust over a will in this particular case, or vice versa?
Yep. So again, it goes back to the situation.
Like if you have 3 kids and you want it, like just in case something happens, like what would you do? Like on that aspect.
Right. So again, it comes back to the situation. Who is it that we're trying to help out, right? And really the goals of the person who is doing it, right? So the main reason, right? I guess the first reason why trusts were created a long time ago was to avoid probate, right? So if I don't have a trust, I pass away. In order for my family to receive the things that were in my name, they had to go to probate court, right? And so trusts were really started, the original reason was to avoid that court process. Nowadays, there are different tools to avoid probate court, but trusts still remain a huge avenue to do it, and really one of the preferred ways, because they're very flexible. There's a lot you can do there.
Yeah. So, I know you are involved in a bunch of different things. Like last time I saw you was at the St. Judy, right?
Yeah.
How'd that work out actually? Like I know that a lot of people showed up and.
Yeah, it was an incredible event. This has nothing to do with the trust, right? No.
But I was in my head and I'm like, man, like I just got it out.
Yeah, no. It was a great event. We had over, I think 2,500 people that participated in terms of actually doing the run walk. And then many more people who came in to help set up the event. And when all in, it was incredible. We raised a few $100,000 for St. Jude's Cancer Hospital.
Yeah, it was an amazing event. I mean, my family went, and we actually took some videos and everything. We posted it up there, and it was just to bring awareness that those people need help.
Yeah. I appreciate you supporting.
Thanks, man. But the reason I bring it together was, are you able to put it like in a trust specifically? Like, look, I want this money to go into a charity or something I believe in or something like that?
Absolutely. So, trusts are extremely flexible, right? It's actually, in some ways, we have so many options, so many things we can do that some people just sort of analysis paralysis type thing. They can analyze way too much. But yeah, absolutely. We can leave things for charity. We can leave things for individual people. Really, we could do almost whatever we want.
From your experience, not to like name names or anything, but like, what ridiculous things have you seen on a trust? Or
well, so on one extreme, I've seen a trust for birds.
Birds?
For birds. Elderly person loved her birds and wanted them cared for, and so left a trust with a not small amount of money to care for the birds. These birds, I think they were parakeets, if I'm not mistaken. They lived for a long time.
Yeah,
she was elderly. They were going to outlive her, so she left a lot of money to care for the birds.
So did she, not to be specific, but like, did she say, hey, look, this money's to take care of them, so somebody needs like to manage it? Like, hey, you're in charge of it, or just whoever takes care of the birds, or how does that work?
The like technical way that it's done is you don't really leave it to the birds.
Yeah.
You leave it to somebody. Hey, Will, here's money, but you have to use it for the birds. Otherwise, if you don't use it for the birds, then it goes to somebody else.
Here's $10 million. Use it only for the birds.
It was not actually $10 million, but it was a few $100,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And then because that's what I got from it. Like, as the more we spoke about it, I was like, this is a blank canvas. Like, I thought you would come in here and be like, look, there's only like 3 options. This is what you got to go. And then when I talk to you, it's kind of like, look, man, this is like, it's go a million different ways.
The options are as varied as people's different lives, right? So what I really focus on almost always is, what's your objective? What are you trying to accomplish? Who are you trying to help, right? And then we go from there, right? And then we can do whatever it is that we have to do in order to reach your goals. Now, we do see a lot of common themes, right? For some people, it's, hey, I want to use a trust because I have this person in my family who has issues with money. Be it they're always shopping on Amazon, there's boxes coming every day, or they have a drug or alcohol problem, just any different number of reasons that we don't want to give a large sum of money to a specific person, right? So that's something that we would sort of keep out of their hand individually.
Yeah, kind of like, hey, look, you're gonna get like this amount of money every single month for the rest of your life or something like that?
We could have it like that, where it's a specific amount of money every month. We could tie it to specific things. You could pay for their house and car, food, but nothing else. There's, again, what it is that you think you want to do for this person.
Okay. Well, more specifically, I guess in relation to my business as a mortgage lender, what's the purpose of putting certain assets under a trust? I get what you said, like, let me leave it, but like, if I'm in life and right now I start putting things under a trust, what's the purpose of that?
So the 2 big things that I try to accomplish is, one is, can we get some kind of protection, right, for those assets? Somebody sues, can we protect those assets in a way? Trust can be used for that. And then another one is that a lot of people don't think about, in terms of trust. We think, okay, what happens when I die? The other one is, well, what happens if I become disabled, right? So if I get into a car accident or I get sick and I can't manage my assets myself, well, if I don't have a trust, there's a high chance that my family has to go to guardianship court to get a court-appointed person to then be able to manage my assets. With a trust, so in my trust, I'm the original trustee, so I'm sort of trusting myself to manage my assets for my family. But if I become incapacitated, if I mentally cannot make decisions for myself, well, I have a backup.
Yeah.
Right, so I can name you as my backup, and now, you're coming in, you could step in while, I'm figuring out.
Going into turmoil or whatever.
That's right.
Okay, and then more importantly is, I mean, I think there's a big wave right now of people calling me and say, well, I want to put my property under my corporation, or I want to put my property under a trust. And I'm like, it's your first property. Like, let's talk about this. How do you feel about that?
So, I'll say it this way, right? I prefer when people start right from the outset. I invest in real estate, right? When I first started, I structured it, right from the first one. And what I mean by structuring it right is if it's an investment property, probably should have an LLC, right? The LLC will help, again, shield against liabilities, and there's certain tax reasons why we would do it. But then who owns that LLC? Is it me individually or is it my trust? Right? Having that in place is really the correct way to do it from the beginning. Now, some people don't, either because they don't know or because of the cost, right? Because there are obviously fees behind it. If it's your first investment property, it's pretty good idea, pretty good advice for them to do it from the outset.
The thing is, I think most people are thinking about this too early on. That's what I tell people. I'm like, look, when you're going to buy your first home, when you're comparing, taking your homestead exemption, and then maybe later I'll turn it to investment, homestead exemption versus trust in protection-wise, and then once you turn that primary property into an investment, and then I get it, there's steps to it,
Right.
So on top of that, buying a house, using the trust, under the trust, it's so many more layers to it, which is like where I'm trying to get to. Like, everybody is going straight into corporations and trusts before even starting.
So I always talk about the primary residence separate, right? If we're talking about investment properties, yeah, absolutely, LLCs, corporations, trusts, all of that's at play. When we're talking about the primary residence here in Florida, I love having it in the individual name. Why? I mean, first of all, from a protection standpoint, the homestead in Florida receives the highest level of protection from any asset whatsoever. So I'm a huge fan of having, home in individual names. My house is in my individual name with my wife, right? It's in our names, right? We have a trust, we have all of that, but it's in our name.
That particular property is under the homestead exemption.
Absolutely, right? So, homestead, a lot of people know it from the property tax side of it. That's just what most people interact with. As far as protection, like homestead also means protecting from creditors. There's also protections for the family. A little known fact, I actually cannot leave my primary residence to my children in a trust because they're minors. It actually has to go to them directly. There are certain caveats.
Everybody needs to understand the differences. I guess that's why we're actually doing an event November 8th with Pedro. What I call it, let's talk about trust. But we're going to talk about taking title under a trust versus a corporation versus your homestead. And I think it's mainly for agents, but everybody could come to learn more about the protection, the benefits, and when you should and shouldn't consider, taking it under a corporation, taking it under a trust, and maybe just leaving your homestead, and maybe setting up the right strategies. I feel that, I don't know if you deal with this a lot, but I deal a lot with people coming in from day one. They don't own anything, and they're considering all these things because they hear all this information on TikTok and Instagram and all these places from these people that are at different levels or are just trying to sell something.
Right. There's a lot of both good and bad information out there about trust and estate planning and all everything that we're talking about right now. The best advice I can give is to choose an attorney who specializes in this area, whether it's me or somebody else. There's a lot of very good estate planning attorneys out there. But make sure that it's somebody who really specializes in this. A lot of time, this happens at least 3-4 times every month, where somebody comes to my office with a will or a trust that was done by a criminal defense attorney, by just an attorney that specializes in another area of law, because there's this sort of like notion that estate planning, oh, that's easy, of course I can write your will. I'm just gonna type in a few names into this form and here you go. There's so much more behind it. I don't earn my money by typing names on a form. Right? My fees are really earned by the advice, the counsel, by looking at things at your situation and making sure that what we're putting on these documents really makes sense for you and your family based off of your current situation and what it is you're trying to achieve. So, really that's just the best advice I can give is go to an estate planning attorney that really focuses on this.
Yeah, when I first thought about a trust, well, first I had met you, and then I was like, talking to my wife about it, and I was like, just thinking about all the headaches that I have, and where and what and how, and I'm like, well, if this happens or what if happens, something happens to me, is you. If something happens to you, then what? And then it could be overwhelming.
It can be. What I tell everyone is, let's make decisions based off of what happens if your estate plan needs to be put into use in the next 3 to 5 years, right? We're both relatively young guys, right? Well, depends on who you ask, right? But, if I look at, well, what are all the possibilities between now and when, my life expectancy is in a few decades from now, if I try to account for all the different possibilities, forget it. I'm never going to get my estate plan done. I'm also not going to make a decision based off of, well, what happens if my plan is needed tomorrow? Why? Because first of all, it's a little morbid, right? But then also, we need to build some contingencies and what ifs, right? Because we're not going to be changing it every month, right? Based off of what's happening today. So really, what's possible in the next 3 to 5 years really gives us a nice cushion to say like, okay, here's where I'm at right now. Here's my family structure right now. Here are my assets right now. And what can I reasonably expect in the next 3 to 5 years? And then we plan based on that.
And this is, I think, definitely a topic that we could keep unfolding over and over and over. And I've heard multiple stories on your behalf from all the different possibilities. So, guys, if you're interested in getting more information about trust and, wills, trust, understanding the different on that, come check us out November 8th. DM Pedro or myself. We'll send you the link. It's completely free. And beyond everything, man, just thank you for coming. I know you're super busy here for you.
Oh, man, for you, anything, man. I'm happy to talk about wills, but always with Will.
Dude, man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you, brother.